Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. When it comes to Warzone, obviously, it's been rough for the past couple of weeks, right? Season 1 obviously did not launch smoothly. We've been through the same song and dance a couple of times already, but looking forward to the next couple of updates. We know we have a new title update inbound here shortly for BO6 and Warzone Season 2 at the end of January. That's launching on January 28th, and with it, we are going to see significant weapon updates and meta updates. And today I specifically want to focus on the general Warzone meta and talk about what's next, what to expect with our next few different weapon and meta updates, because up until this point, this really surprisingly is not something we've seen much of. We're coming off of Modern Warfare 3, which had constant weapon updates. It seemed like almost every week, if not every other week, they were buffing or nerfing something. It wasn't always changing necessarily the number one meta weapon every single week or every other week, but there were a lot of weapon changes and a lot of meta updates pretty consistently. And so far this year, we really haven't seen any major weapon or meta changes since Season 1 dropped and it introduced all the Black Ops 6 weapons and sort of readjusted things. Like, we've had a few Modern Warfare 3 and Modern Warfare 2 weapons nerfed, but for Black Ops 6, not really all that much has changed. So looking forward, there is one sort of main target date for likely the majority of these changes, if not all these changes, to happen across the meta with all weapons. But it's also possible that in the coming weeks, we do see a couple of other smaller updates, hotfix like updates that go out and maybe address a few things. There are a couple of physically broken weapons in the game right now that we'll talk about here in just a moment. There's also the possibility though for some slight weapon changes as well, just through a random hotfix update or update requires restart patch. Obviously, if that were to happen, I'll keep you guys in the know, but really a lot of what we're looking forward to with a lot of these main meta and weapon updates is our next season. Season 2 is basically guaranteed to have these significant changes. Not only are we going to see all the new Season 2 weapons added in, whatever debuts through the battle pass, then maybe through events throughout the season and whatnot, so that'll be meta changing in and of itself, but then we'll also see significant buffs and nerfs, and obviously those exact details will surface once we get the Season 2 patch notes in a few weeks time. But there are a few things to preview as what could happen between the 1.66 update and then also Season 2. There's a couple of things initially outright that probably are going to be updated pretty shortly, just because they've been direct updates from the COD Updates Twitter account the past couple of weeks, and that is a few broken weapons. And funny enough, none of these are Black Ops 6 guns. So you may remember that prior to Christmas and the holidays, the Core 45 had to be disabled and removed from the game yet again because the blueprints keep breaking, where it just turns into basically a switch weapon. It fires insanely fast and has the quickest TTK in the entire game, and they couldn't stop that from breaking. Every time they re-added it in, another blueprint would just break it and it'd have that crazy overpowered TTK. So they disabled the Core 45. That is still yet to be added to the game. So we've got a fix for that coming at some point. And then most recently, just the other day, of course, they disabled the Reclaimer 18 because, again, a blueprint for this allowed it to actually fire more shots than intended, so it was basically an instant TTK up close as well. Funny enough, there is also a broken Lockwood 300 blueprint that's doing the same thing right now, and they didn't disable that one yet. I imagine that might be coming though. However, a couple of weapons that are completely removed from the game as of right now should be coming back once they do balance those out and fix those broken blueprints and broken elements. So a couple of weapon updates there outright that we should see here in the relatively near future. However, outside of just a couple of just outright broken weapons, there are some larger changes that I think definitely need to happen within the meta, and things that I think likely will be adjusted in maybe large capacities here, some smaller capacities there, right? Obviously, it's really a time is going to tell sort of thing, but there's a few obvious outliers in the meta as it stands now that are likely going to be adjusted in some capacity. So as we do continue on with the details here, quick reminder, if you are new to the channel, you want to guarantee that every single day you're in the know for all things going on in COD. This is the place to be to stay up to date whenever we do see significant updates or major updates. We see smaller surprise ones, any changes like that, I got you guys covered. So feel free to hit that subscribe button and join us on the road to 1 million. And if you enjoy this video, a like rating is always seriously appreciated as well. It really does help grow the channel and share the video around. Now, of course, Warzone in and of itself from a gameplay standpoint hasn't been great. Obviously there's a ton of bugs and glitches going around that make playing the game a little bit annoying at times. And then you have all the cheating and the server issues as well. But then if you are just simply trying to play the game, maybe you're playing on console with cross play off, or you just simply put up with some of the shenanigans going on, you gotta admit, the meta so far this year has been pretty one-dimensional, pretty stale rather quickly. Like at first, obviously, when you have all the new BO6 guns, it's fun, it's fresh, you're testing everything out, but then the definitive meta stands out, and it's been basically the same since day one. The XM4 and the Jackal have been the go-to weapons. These are two that I absolutely think they either need to just nerf outright, bring them down to the rest of the competition, right? So that you have more parity in the rifle category and the SMG categories in general, but then also just the overall close and long range metas. If you really want to win right now, you're probably running those two weapons on a loadout, or you got Gunfighter for the first one, and then you got a second Gunfighter setup, you go and buy it through the buy station, and then you have 16 attachments across your loadout in general, right? So those are two weapons that I've definitely got my eyes on for some potential nerfs, or maybe some buffs to the other general competition to sort of match the XM4 and the Jackal. If they're happy with the TTK and the overall performance of those guns, maybe they try and just match the other weapons to that and bring them into a similar time as far as TTK goes or damage and range goes with those two guns. The thing is though, particularly with the XM4, the reason that this is sort of been the go-to so far is because of the buffer weight stock, turning it into a zero recoil laser beam essentially, right? Now it is available on the XMG and some players still do use that. It's also available on, I think, the DM10, not as popular, but the XM4 is the go-to because it's just so easy. And that's funny because the XM4 statistically isn't even the best rifle. Like the Goblin outguns it in the mid-range, the AK outguns it over long range, but those are more difficult weapons to use. The AS Val as well, but I think the DPM on that's obviously very rough and whatnot. So the XM4 is just well balanced in terms of TTK and range and whatnot, but because it's so easy and you can just fry over every range with it, people flock to it, and that's why it's the #1 weapon. And clearly this is a trend for Warzone dating back to Warzone 1. Low recoil, easy to use weapons, particularly fully auto weapons like rifles and LMGs and whatnot, appeal to the mass amount of players, right? You look back at Warzone 1, the Kilo, the Grau, two weapons that didn't always necessarily have the fastest TTKs, were so easy and stayed meta a lot throughout even, you know, Black Ops 6 and Vanguard Warzone because they were easy and straightforward. So if that's a trend that they're trying to continue here in Warzone and sort of recreate that Warzone 1 feel, then again, you either have to nerf the main culprit, in this case the XM4, or even maybe specifically the buffer weight stock and bring down the pros of that, because I mean, they are very drastic pros. It turns the weapon from night and day in terms of, you know, decently easy to use to requires nothing. You can just pick it up and fry with it right away, right? So either you have to go through and make the buffer weight stock maybe globally available, in which case it'd be the meta crutch attachment. Everyone would spam that on their loadouts, or you slightly nerf the significant advantages that it creates on a weapon, or you then try and just match other weapons to that recoil so that maybe the buffer weight stock isn't as valuable. You lower the recoil on the default weapons of the XM4, of other rifles, the AK, so on and so forth, so that everything again inherently becomes easier to use. And they already sort of did that with the visual recoil update. You just make the patterns in and of themselves a little bit easier, and then everything's a no recoil laser beam. However they go about it, some people are going to love it, some people are going to hate it. That's just the state of the Warzone meta at all times, right? But that's essentially, I think, how you have to approach that. So a couple of things in specific that I've got my eyes on there between the XM4, the Jackal, and then just the general recoil meta that we've got going on right now. And then lastly, another thing I want to focus on that I think truly is probably going to get more attention, maybe minimally from season to season, but perhaps more over time, is the emphasis on MW2 and MW3 weapons feeling competitive. If they insist on having them in the game and creating this situation where we've got 150 weapons and half of them break because of blueprints, like we've seen earlier in this video, right? You have to actually support these weapons. Otherwise, they're just taking up space on the game. They're causing issues. They're breaking things when a blueprint gets busted, right? So as it stands now, there's a heavy distinction between BO6 guns and how they behave and perform and feel, and then all the MW2 and MW3 guns. They feel worse inherently. Their recoil, their sway, their predictability is less than that of BO6, which is to be expected. Every single year, the new game's guns outperform the old game's guns, but they said they wanted to keep these competitive. Like they specifically mentioned this year, MW2 and MW3 guns are not going to be just completely irrelevant. And yet, they feel way worse. They have issues with the slide to fire speeds, the dive to fire speeds, like I said, general control and sway and everything there. So that's certainly something that needs to be looked into and adjusted in some capacity as well. I can't imagine that's very high up on the priority list, right? Obviously, the meta in general is clearly not a significant priority, at least thus far, when the game is in such a rough state from just a standard gameplay perspective with the servers, the cheaters, the general bugs and glitches that are going on, which is probably part of the reason why we haven't seen so many meta updates thus far. But as they do start to put out some updates, which as we've seen recently seem to at least be attacking some of the more problematic things going on in game, you can start to have at least some smoother gameplay to a certain extent, and then you can focus a bit more on weapon updates and meta changes. So of course, as we see new announcements here, any new updates that do go out or changes that go live, you guys know I'll be keeping you in the loop with the latest need to know info. So feel free to hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with all of that. And if you enjoyed the video, a like rating on your way out would be seriously appreciated. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you later. Peace out.